everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Brittany of BrittanyJJones.com. If this is the first time tuning into the channel, welcome. I hope that you will like what you see and subscribe below for more. In this video, we are going to be sewing. This is the first sew along of 2023, and I'm so excited. This is also the first video in my Dresses for V-Day series. That's what I'm calling it. I just made it up. Dresses for V-Day. That's what we're going to do. That is the series where I'm going to be sewing some dresses leading up to Valentine's Day. I'm really going to try to use like pink and red just to kind of stick with the theme, but we'll see. I may like go rogue and make something out of blue or black. I don't know. Stay tuned for that. But if you missed my previous video showing you the pattern that I'm using, the fabric, the notion, and talking about the size that I'm going to be cutting, be sure to watch this video right here, and then you can come back and sew along with me. The pattern that we're going to be sewing along to is Simplicity S9644. I'm really excited about this dress. Let's go ahead and get started sewing. To get started, we're going to begin working with pattern piece number 1. This is our front piece. Right here along our neck edge, we are going to do a narrow hem. We're going to do a 5/8 of an inch narrow hem here. And on pattern piece number 2, we're going to do a 5/8 of an inch narrow hem along the bottom edge. Let's go ahead and do our narrow hem now. Okay, I have my narrow hems pressed in place. I actually had to put a few pins in here just to hold it in place, especially right here in the curves, because the fabric wanted to roll out. So once I pressed up 5/8 of an inch, I opened out the press and I tucked in the raw edges and pressed it again. Right here at the curves, it is a challenge, but once you get it over, you can put a pin there to hold it in place. After you have it pressed, we can go ahead and stitch it in place. For the needle, I do have in a ballpoint jersey needle. As far as the stitch go, I do want to take a look at the instructions together. So when sewing with knit fabrics, you do need enough stretch or give in your stitch, which is why zigzag stitches is what you will commonly see, a narrow zigzag stitch. But they also have it here that you can use a straight stitch as long as you are stretching it slightly as you are sewing. Not too much to where you're getting waves and ripples in their fabric, but just enough so that your stitch has some stretch in it. Or you could always use one of the stretch stitches that is built into your machine. So I just want to draw attention to this right here because they do have notes when sewing with knit fabric. So if you see someone sewing with a straight stitch, just know that they may just be stretching it slightly just to give the stitch a little bit of give, or they may use a zigzag stitch. Either or works just fine, but just do what works best for you. And again, make sure that you check out this section right here because it also talks about pressing it. It also talks about preventing the shoulder seam from stretching out, what you can do, which we will do this together. And it also talks about how you can stabilize your zipper. So don't skip over this portion when you are opening up your sewing guide. I'm going to be using a straight stitch for this neck area here, but if you're not comfortable with that, definitely go ahead and use a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch on your sewing machine. I do want to note that this right here on the back of my sewing machine acts as a walking foot. So I am using a walking foot while I am sewing. I just want to mention that. If you feel like your knit needs a walking foot and you have it, go ahead and put that on your machine. Okay, I've just sewn my narrow hems in place, so I have the neck edge of the dress sewn and I pressed it, and I also did the lower edge of pattern piece number 2 and pressed it. Here's a closer look at the inside of the dress around that curve. And the stitch, it still has some give, and I use a straight stitch and I lengthen it out from a 2.5 to a 3.0. Now we can go ahead and base pattern piece number 2 to pattern piece number 1. You're going to grab pattern piece number 2 and lay it over pattern piece number 1 like so. You should have transferred some small and large dots. We want to go ahead and match those up and pin everything in place. Okay, once you have it pinned, now we can go ahead and baste the raw edges together. So baste along your shoulder seams and right here around the armhole. Alright, once you have basted it in place along the raw edges, next you can go ahead and grab your back pattern pieces and we can pin and stitch our shoulder seams. Here's my back pattern piece here. I'm going to go ahead and pin it in place. If you would like to stabilize your shoulder seam to keep it from stretching out over time, you can use a piece of twill tape if you have that on hand. You can also use hem tape or clear elastic. It's just going to keep the shoulder seam again from stretching as you're wearing and washing and caring for your garment over time. So again, I'm just going to place this here and I'm going to pin it in place. When we stitch, we're going to be stitching on our seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch, and the stitch should go down the middle of your tape. I'm going to go ahead and pin it in place. Okay, I have it pinned in place. I'm going to go ahead and stitch on a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure that I stitch down the center of my twill tape. Again, if you did not have twill tape or anything to stabilize it with, just go ahead and pin your seams together and stitch it at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, I have my shoulder seam sewn here. So this is what the seam looks like on the inside of my garment, nice and open. I added my twill tape to my back pattern seam allowance, so it's back here. I didn't add it to the front. I always like to put mine along the back. I will say though, when you stitch down the middle of the twill tape, sometimes it's kind of hard to fold it over and press it and get it flat. But it does keep the shoulder seam intact. This is locked in here. It's not going anywhere. So I just wanted to mention that. Now let's move on to the next step. Next, we're going to start working on our neckband. So here's my neckband piece here. You should have cut out one. We are going to fold it in half with the wrong sides facing like so. So the right side should be out. And we are going to baste along the ends of the neckband. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, I have basted the ends of my neckband together. I also went ahead and serged it because I serged the center back seam of my back pieces already. So here is my dress here. We're going to go ahead and attach our neckband to the neck edge. Okay, with the right sides facing, you want to begin matching up your notches as well as your small circles. Those small circles are going to match up with your shoulder seams. So I'm just going to align mine up here, and you may have to stretch your band to fit. So just grab some pins and start pinning in place. Once you have it pinned, we can go ahead and stitch our seam at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And once you have it sewn, you can go ahead and stitch again a 1/4 of an inch inside the seam allowance to do a double stitch. Or if you have a serger, you can use your serger in place of that 1/4 of an inch stitch. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, I have my neckband sewn on. Here's a closer look at it. This is what it looks like on the inside. So if you do not have a serger, after you do your 5/8 of an inch stitch, you can just come over inside of your seam allowance and do a 1/4 of an inch stitch. Then you can trim close to your second stitching. Once you have it sewn, you can go ahead and press it down so that your seam is going down toward the garment, pressing your band out. And then we can do a stitch here on the right side of the fabric. You can do a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch really close to the seam. So it's somewhat of an edge stitch right here. That's just going to keep that seam allowance facing down in our garment. So let's go ahead and do that now. Again, you can use a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. Okay, I just did my stitch here along the outside, along the neck edge. This is a close-up of it here, and this is what it looks like on the inside. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next step in the direction that has you go ahead and inserting your zipper, but I am going to go ahead and insert my sleeves next, and I'm going to install them using the flat sleeve method. I like to install sleeves on knit garments using the flat sleeve method as opposed to setting the sleeve in. I just find it a lot easier, and you can stitch it in one continuous stitch going from the hem of your garment all the way up to the hem of the sleeve. That's just something that I prefer, but if you do want to do a set-in sleeve, then you can go ahead and do your zipper first and then do your sleeve. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my sleeves now and go ahead and install them. So when doing it the flat sleeve method, you want to make sure that you have your garment facing up like so. I'm going to grab both of my sleeves here, and I'm going to be looking at my notches, the single notch for the front, double notch for the back. I'm going to see which one of my sleeves matches that. So this is a single here, this is a double, so that's for the other sleeve. So I'm going to match this one here. You should have transferred circles and notches. The circle that's at the top of the sleeve cap matches up to your shoulder seam. You can go ahead and pin that in place. And now we can match up our notches and pin in place. And then you can just continue pinning your sleeve, matching up your small circles and your notches. Once you have it all pinned, you can go ahead and pin your other sleeve in place the same exact way. Make sure that you have your fabric laying so that it's right sides facing up like so. Match up your notches and just go ahead and pin your sleeve in place the same way that we did here. We're going to be stitching in a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. After you have it stitched, then you can stitch again 1/4 of an inch away inside the seam allowance, or you can use your serger to go ahead and finish off your raw edge. Let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, once you have your sleeve installed, you have it sewn, and you finished off your seam allowance, you can go ahead and press your seam allowance only. You don't need to press all the way along the seam, just press the seam allowance, and that will help to shrink out the fullness here. So go ahead and finish off your sleeves, and then we can put right sides facing and stitch down our side seam. Okay, so here's my sleeve here, here's a side seam. I'm going to go ahead and pin my underarm seam here together, so make sure that you have your seam pinned nice and even. And then we're just going to continue pinning our sleeve and our side seam. You want to match up your notches as you go along and just pin in place. Alright, once you have your sleeve and underarm pinned together, you can go ahead and begin stitching. Start stitching at the hem of your dress, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and just work your way all the way up to the hem of your sleeve. You're going to do that for both sides of your dress. Once you have your side seam sewn as well as your sleeve seam sewn, you want to go ahead and press your seams open and make sure they're nice and flat. Once you have your seams sewn and pressed, now we can go ahead and install our zipper. Before we install the zipper, I do want to note that I have cut 2 strips of fusible interfacing. This is knit fusible interfacing here. I've cut them again 3/4 of an inch wide, and they are the length from the top of the neckband down to the notch where we will be stopping our zipper stop will be. So from the notch that you transfer all the way up to the top of the neckband, I have fused on some fusible interfacing. Again, it's 3/4 of an inch wide. Here's my invisible zipper that I'm going to be installing. Invisible zippers can be installed using a regular zipper foot or an invisible zipper foot. I have both, and I'm going to use the invisible zipper foot. I have it, but I've never used it, so I'm excited to see how better it is for installing the zipper. So with right sides facing, I'm going to unzip the zipper, and I'm going to place it so that it is right sides facing. So this is the wrong side of the zipper here. I'm going to place my zipper stop about 1/8 of an inch below the top edge of the neckband. You want to make sure that your coils are on your seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And we're going to go ahead and pin it in place. So again, I have the zipper stop right up here, about 1/8 of an inch down from the upper edge of the neckband. I have my coils on the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and you want to make sure that your zipper tape is in your seam allowance, not over here. So make sure that you have your zipper facing the correct way. Go ahead and grab some pins and we can pin it in place. If it helps, you can mark out your seam line so you know where your 5/8 of an inch stitching line is. I didn't mention it, but the reason why we add this interfacing here is to add a little bit of stability for the zipper. Again, we're working with knit fabric, so the zipper can be a little bit heavy in this area depending on the weight of your fabric, but it's always good to stabilize your zipper, whether you're working with woven fabric or knit. This is a high stress area, constantly zipping up and zipping down, so whenever you can stabilize it and give it a little bit of support is always a good idea. All right, once you have one side of your zipper tape pinned in place, if you like, you can hand baste it so that you know your zipper isn't going anywhere. You can machine baste it if you like. If you're happy with the placement, you can go ahead and begin stitching in place. I'm going to go ahead and head to the machine now and just go ahead and stitch mine. Okay, once you have one side of your zipper sewn on, this is what mine looked like here. So I have one side of the zipper sewn. I'm going to grab my other back piece. Again, I'm going to make sure that the top of the zipper is about 1/8 of an inch down from the top. I'm going to make sure that the zipper teeth is along my seam line, 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to pin it in place. Doing it with the invisible zipper foot, it was easier. I didn't have to move the coils over at all, so I will probably install my zippers using that foot from now on. So just continue pinning this side of the zipper in, baste it in place, and go ahead and stitch it the same way that we stitched the other side. Okay, I have the other side of my zipper sewn in place, so now I'm going to zip up the dress and take a look at the zipper, see how well the invisible zipper foot did. So I'm just gonna turn everything around for just a moment and zip it up, take a quick look at it. Okay, up here at the point where the seams meet, that's pretty clean. I'm not gonna complain about that and be OCD. It matches up really good. Here at the top is good. And the zipper teeth looks really good. I'm really impressed with how the invisible zipper foot works. So I'm really happy with this zipper install here. All right, so now we can go ahead and finish off the remaining of the seam. And we're gonna put the fabric down here, right sides together. We can go ahead and pin the remainder of our center seam together. I will say adding the interfacing behind the zipper, it really does make a difference. It doesn't feel like the zipper is too heavy for the fabric. It feels nice and stabilized, and that's what we want. So definitely don't skip out on adding some interfacing behind your zipper. Okay, to close up the bottom portion of our seam, we want to make sure that we move this part of the zipper out of the way. And then right where our last stitch is, we're going to come to the left of this stitch very slightly. And we're going to be about 1/4 of an inch above where we stopped the stitching. So my stitching stops here. I'm going to come up about 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just slightly to the left of this stitch. I'm going to begin stitching down here. I'm going to stitch about 3 inches down, and once I clear this area, then I'll put on my regular presser foot and continue sewing. So let's go ahead and close up this seam now. Okay, Okay, once you have it sewn, we can go ahead and open out our seam and give it a press. If you would like to tack down the end of your zipper, you can open up your seam again and just stitch down the zipper tape here at the end of the seam. So I'm just gonna do a couple stitches here at the end. And I'm gonna flip it and do the same thing to the other side. Okay, once you have your zipper installed, now we need to close up the top edge here. To finish off this top, you just want to fold it over like so. And we're just going to stitch this down. You can continue on your same stitch that you used to install the zipper. If it helps, you can flip it onto the back. So this is your stitch here. You can just lap that over and follow along with that same stitching line. After you have it sewn down and secure, then we can fold the seam allowance back to the inside like so. And then you just want to get a needle and thread and just stitch this down here at the top, attaching the zipper tape to the top of your neckband. You want to make sure that the zipper tape isn't above the neckband so you can see it. Kind of hand sew it so it is inside of it like so. All right, after you have your zipper sewn and you have stitched it along the top of the neckband, the last thing for us to do is to hem. We just need to do a 5/8 of an inch hem on our sleeve and a 5/8 of an inch hem on the bottom of the dress. We're going to do the same exact steps that we did for the top here when we did the 5/8 of an inch hem. So just repeat those steps again for your sleeve and for the hem of your dress, and then you'll be all done with your dress. Well, that is all for the video, and I really do hope that you all enjoyed it. If you made it this far, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, leave a comment. I am so excited for this series and the next dress that we're going to be doing. You got to stick around so you know we're going to be sewing next Friday. Also, don't forget on Sunday, I'm going to be going live at 5 p.m. I'm going to be answering some of you all questions, and I also may give you a little overview and my thoughts on this pattern. So definitely make sure you have those notifications turned on so you do not miss it. I go live on Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Well, that's all, y'all. I will see you in the next video. Blessings, everyone. Bye. Thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to check out these two playlists here if you are interested in more sewing content. Check my blog out at brittanyjjones.com and make sure that you subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video goes live. Until next time, blessings. Bye.